race for South Carolina House District 114, which covers parts of West Ashley and Summerville, is heating up between current state representative Lin Bennett and businessman Ed Sutton. Today, I speak exclusively with Ed for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Ed Sutton, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Quintin, good to see you. I think this is number 3 for us, and always a joy to get together. I wish it could be in person this time, but hopefully, once we get on the backside of this thing, we'll be doing more interviews here in the future.
And no worries at all. I understand from my conversation with you, obviously off camera, you said you're very busy with your campaign. Who is Ed Sutton now as a Democratic candidate for House District 114?
Someone working hard to win your vote. That's who I am right now. We are, of course, in the final stages of this campaign. We're feeling really good about everything so far, how it's progressing. We've been very active, reaching out, talking to people, meeting people in their neighborhoods, of course, with social distancing and mask and precautions and everything. But this has been, needless to say, a very interesting year, with the backdrop of COVID and everything, to seek office. But I think, if anything, it shows a need for leaders that understand the needs of people, the needs to be proactive when it comes to public health measures and everything, and just feel really good about the possibility of winning the seat coming up here in November. And then, of course, on November 4th, that's when the real work begins as a state representative.
What proactive measures do you have now for public health safety?
Yeah, so let's talk about South Carolina and where we're at when it comes to COVID, right? So we're one of the least populous states on the East Coast, but unfortunately, we're not only a leader in America for infection rate, but also we were the leader in the world for a while. And unfortunately, the results speak for themselves. Our leadership on this has not been the best. We were very slow to respond in the beginning, one of the last ones to get serious about changing course, starting to do social distancing. We've never had a statewide mask mandate. And again, the results speak for themselves. And what's truly, frustrating with this is I'm a small business owner, right? And a lot of this timidness towards getting serious about this environment was kind of done under the backdrop that, we don't want to hurt the economy too bad. Well, it turns out we hurt the economy far worse by prolonging this thing and never flattening the curve versus getting serious about it right away. Really shutting things down, flattening that curve. By kind of taking a lackadaisical approach to this, we've prolonged it, and we're still nowhere close to being back to normal, unfortunately. So I think that our approach from the state level leaves a lot to be desired, and that's certainly not just my opinion, but something I'm hearing from a lot of folks out in the community as well.
I interviewed State Representative Russell Ott earlier this summer for Quintin's Close-Ups, and he basically said that the state should have had a statewide mask mandate. Are you in agreement with that?
I am, yes. This is a situation where you let the science lead. We're here to enact and listen to the expert, but unfortunately, too much politics, and I'll say junk science was inserted into this. And again, the results speak for themselves. South Carolina as a population should not be where we're at for an infection rate. It should not be where we're at for a death rate. But because we ignored the warnings of the experts, here we are. And what that means, if you want to change course, if you want to, do better next time, or this crisis is not yet complete, you got to change out some of the folks that are making the calls here. And this is certainly one race to pay attention to. With that, getting back to professional representation and actually understanding the needs of people here in South Carolina.
And what was that junk science?
Yeah, a lot of people have been questioning, the experts here. We take back the mask, for example, saying that masks don't work. They do. There's not really any debate to be had there. So unfortunately, we've allowed some of these voices from the fringes to creep in here when we really should, again, be listening to the experts.
Testing versus infection. Do you know how many testing cases are there in your district and how many are actually infection cases?
Yeah, I don't think there's of course there's a lot of information made available by zip code and county. I don't think that they have broken it down between districts. So of course, these districts cut zip codes in half. They cut counties in half. This one in particular is about the district falls 2/3 of it's in Charleston County, 1/3 is in Dorchester County. So Pacific to 114. I don't think that information is available, but unfortunately, I do know that Charleston County was one of the leaders in the state with infection rates.
And what is the average age of the person in your district with infections? And is that average getting lowered, Ed?
Yeah, the average age, I know that people over 65, of course, are more susceptible to COVID-19. And I'll say more of the adverse effects, but there can be carriers of any age. And we're certainly seeing that more with some of our school reopenings, that unfortunately some of our even children can carry this, may not display any symptoms or anything like that, but it does allow for spread there. So there's a 65 and above, I think, is kind of the big age number for infections, but we all have a part to play in making sure that we don't spread this virus.
You talk about the schools and you talk about the kids. Let me go back to an article that the Post Inquiry posted earlier this summer. And the headline reads this: many SC schools may be dealing with a pandemic without a full-time nurse. School districts across the state are scrambling to hire nurses. The necessity as classrooms reopen amid a pandemic, but they're competing against each other, as well as hospitals that pay much more. Let me ask you this, Ed. How much should the state be willing to hire for more nurses? And how much do you think this is going to actually cost the average taxpayer?
Yeah, how many should you hire? Enough until the problem's addressed. And let's talk about some funding sources that come along with that. The governor was given this big CARES Act. Unfortunately, he gave the majority of it away to private schools. Public money should always be used in public schools. We should not be giving it away to private schools. And that money could have been used to hire nurses in our public school system. And that's one way that the incumbent in this seat, Lin Bennett, and I differ very much. She supported the governor's giveaway there of the unregulated private schools. I'm very much in line with what the teachers and the educators of the state have said. Give us the support. You tell us that we are essential, but you don't pay us like we're essential. You don't support us like we're essential, and you don't give us the protective equipment like you're essential. So that money could have gone a long, long way to help out our public educators here in the state.
And I hope it gets State Representative Lin Bennett on Quintin's co-stops before the election. But you said this on your platform. You said this, quote: "Our state must do more to support our educators, better pay, limit on classroom sizes, and less standardized testing. We need impactful leadership who will make education top priority for our state." And let me ask you this: what is your definition of better pay?
Yeah, so one of the things we're at in South Carolina is we are far below the Southeast average, let alone the national average. And what's happening is we have a huge turnover problem in education. In 2019, we lost 5,500 teachers to the profession, never to return. And where a big crunch point, if you will, that we're seeing is a lot of young educators at that 3-year mark are leaving the profession because they're having to work 2 and 3 jobs just to make their rent or just to make their mortgage. And they're making that decision and saying, hey, I love education. I love what I do here as a job, but I have the bills to pay. I have families to support. I have a future to consider. And unfortunately, with my qualifications, I'm more competitive in other industries. So unfortunately, education, because we are paying teachers so low, we're losing a lot of good talent out there. And it creates, beyond just losing the talent, it creates a huge turnover problem, which we know is not great for the classroom as well. So I think at a minimum, we should be at the Southeast average, but we should be striving to the national average. And again, unfortunately, the House made a decision the other week that they were going to freeze teacher step raises this year. Very much not against that. Again, it goes back to, you cannot tell educators they are essential, but not pay them essential, not give them the support like they're essential, not give them the equipment like they're essential. So there's a lot of, I'll say, political doublespeak happening right now in this state, and we've got to change course. We cannot continue like this.
And what is that equipment that's essential right now?
Yeah, everything for masks, for having the funds available to have these companies come in that spray the chemicals that desanitize or sanitize the classroom, to having that additional support staff, like you mentioned, like nurses on hand. So there's a full gamut of support that teachers need in any given year, but especially this year.
Let me reread that is what you just said. Our state must do more to support our educators, better pay, limits on classroom sizes. What is the current limit right now in South Carolina schools?
I think it varies a little bit from county to county, but that is certainly one thing. And I've actually on my wall here have the priorities for SE for Ed hanging there, and that's one of the things that they're asking for is a cap statewide on classroom sizes. Because as you know, once you get reach a certain point, unfortunately, you kind of lose that individual touch. So that is something that SE for Ed has made a priority, and like I said, I've got it hanging on my wall. It's a priority for Ed Sutton as well.
And what are your priorities?
Yeah, so education, we've hit that one pretty good about that. I'll switch it over to another topic a little bit, infrastructure, right? These past 2 weeks have been a good indication that our infrastructure, especially here in the low country, is lacking. I would say at a minimum, we're about 20 years behind. And last Monday, we had a major flooding event, tides over 8 feet. And there wasn't a single rain cloud in the sky. And downtown flooded, West Ashley flooded, Summerville flooded. So we got work to do on that front because we know the sea levels are going to continue to rise here. And doing nothing is not the solution. And I think specific of how we should handle this is I think the municipalities, they're best to know where the projects need to be. Where we need to improve our drainage, where we need to do, canals or pump stations, everything. Well, the job of a state representative, state senator is go to Columbia and fight for that support. And I'll tell you one thing, one of the questions that I constantly get is like, how are you going to pay for teacher pay? How are you going to pay for these flooding infrastructure projects? And I'll tell you how. We're going to stop these silly tax breaks, right? So last year we did this $115 million tax breaks for the Carolina Panthers to build a practice field. That stuff is insane. The owner of that team is a billionaire. It is a profitable team. We should not be giving $115 million of taxpayer money away for somebody to build a practice field. Well, we need that for our roads. We need it for our schools, and we need it for our flooding infrastructure. So we've got to stop the tax breaks. And when we do that, we will have the funds available to address these major issues that we have here in South Carolina.
As a matter of fact, you said this quote, I will spend my time in Columbia advocating for my constituents, not wasting precious session time and money on pet projects. What are the current pet projects in District 114 that you're concerned about?
Well, in District 114, I'll tell you part of the reason why I'm running is unfortunately with this incumbent, there really isn't any pet projects outside of her support for the fetal heartbeat bill. There's really not much happening at all. So we've got Pacific in District. We need more proactive leadership that will actually do something, engage with citizens, have these forums, go up there and fight for our interests. Transition to a state as a whole, there's all kinds of, silly projects, again, like the Carolina Panthers being, that practice facility being one of them, that we need people to stand up and say, no more of this. We're going to focus on the needs, and I call it the building blocks. Roads and schools are the building block of our community, and that's where the attention is needed, not, these silly practice facilities.
Let me get back to flooding. Obviously, we talk about Dutch dialogues all the time in Charleston. Which one of those recommendations would you adopt and support?
Yeah, so the biggest takeaway with the Dutch dialogues is work with water, work with the flow of water, and meaning that strictly trying to wall things off alone is not going to work. We've got to do really kind of focus on our drainage, and especially when we have these major rain events. We have to have retention ponds and places for water to go and sit for 72 hours while the system basically drains and everything. So there's a lot of different ways that we can look at that with when developments, when they happen. If we start put a greater emphasis on permanent parking lots, so where you don't have asphalt that just takes up absorbable ground and it all runs off into your neighbor's property or something like that, but actually having parking lots that will absorb the water and use that land available underneath there for water absorption. But also, along those lines too, and I kind of already hinted at that, is when we do, future projects and everything like that, we have to consider that, the surrounding area. If we keep building up based on a neighborhood that's been there for 70 years and all that future runoff goes into there, that's wrong. We're not, that is not treating your neighbors appropriately. So we've got a lot of things at the granular level when it comes to development. And I'm a developer. I know these things firsthand that we have to look at flooding, because unfortunately we're very disjointed at this point. And again, the results speak for themselves with some of these major flooding events that you're seeing.
Are you in support of fill and bill?
So It depends. And that's one thing. Fill and bill, it's a very broad topic. I'll tell you one reason why we shouldn't ban it outright is Sony Field, perfect example, right? There's no question. The only way to save that stadium is you got to go up with it because that is such a low-lying area right there on the marsh. And it's a historic stadium. I think that seeing Sony Field brought back the prominence is not just important athletic thing, but it's a cultural icon here within the city of Charleston. So there's no way to save, unfortunately, that without fill and bill. Now, when you transition that kind of out to the suburbs and West Ashley, yeah, that's something that we probably should no longer be doing. We should particularly, there will be needs for adjustments of leveling out lots and everything. But one of the other things that we have not looked at that is a problem there is making sure that we have soil that is truly native to the low country. And as strange as that sounds, we are bringing in a lot of soil from other places that just quite frankly doesn't absorb water like the low country soil does. So we need to make sure that we're utilizing more native soil. And sorry to get super engineer on you there, but like I said, I did small time development in my full-time job and see these problems every day firsthand.
Yeah, and let me ask you this too. What are the three major drainage issues in your district?
Number one, Church Creek, right? Unfortunately, Shadow Moss keeps getting flooded out year after year. And unfortunately, with some of the up basin development, I don't think it's going to get better until we change course. And that's a great area, like I've already mentioned, that we probably need, no kidding, a full-on canal system to move that water when we have these major flooding events, to move it from the wetlands and move it from the neighborhoods out to the Ashley River as quickly as possible, but also have those retention ponds along the way to store excess water. There are some areas, and I'll be honest, that we probably, if you're, in the last 5 years, if we've had the same structure that is flooded over and over again, we also have to get serious about looking at, utilizing FEMA funds to pay that owner an appropriate amount of money and buy that home back from them. And we can't penalize the owner, right? A lot of these owners, these structures were built in the 70s. It's not their fault. The owners, they didn't know that it was going to flood, and we're put in a bad situation. So that's where it's the role of our elected leaders to protect them, get them the appropriate funds to buy that structure back, and then turn it into a passive park or something like that. Because we know with data and everything, where the areas that are going to repeatedly flood, and we can't keep building there. It's the definition of sanity is doing the same thing and expecting different results. We can't keep building in these flood-prone areas or keep rebuilding in these flood-prone areas. And
what other data are you looking at, Ed?
Whatever comes across my desk, whether it's Dutch dialogues, there's new FEMA maps that the Charleston County is approving here. I think it's January 2021. We're a couple years behind. It took a little while to get those maps approved, but I'll say overall, I'm pretty impressed with them. The technology they used is far greater than the previous maps that we had, and I'll say they're fairly accurate. But those are the things too that we probably should maybe look at updating those maps, because as we do these infrastructure projects and stuff, it will change the flow of water in our community and everything. So waiting every 20 years to update our flood maps may not be the best course. We may need to shorten that cycle to every 5 years or so.
And how many homes in District 114 should FEMA buy back?
That's a good question. I don't have the exact number there, but like I mentioned, if we, probably the easiest way to determine that is if we look at flood insurance claims and see year after year that this structure is once again being paid out with FEMA funds to be rebuilt, then at some point we got to say, hey, this is going to continue to get worse. Let's compensate this owner fairly and then turn this area into a retention pond or a passive park or something.
And what would those parks look like?
So I think a really good example of one is the one that's proposed, the old Piggly Wiggly site on Highway 61. That's an area that right now it's a blacktop concrete pavement lot. It's not absorbing any water there, and it's going to have a running trail around it. It's going to have a couple retention ponds, and I think that is a perfect example of the type of public infrastructure that we should be building. That is a park that we can use during the day, but during flooding events, we don't go there. We let the water do its thing, and then I'll come back later.
And what the COVID situation affecting the local economy so badly, do you know how it has affected tax revenues that your district needs to fund most of these projects?
Oh, big time. I mean, I think the city of Charleston is looking at about a $40 million shortfall in their yearly budget right now, which is huge. That's incredible. And I think that also speaks to a higher level, which falls into the realm of state representative tax problem. 34% of our state revenue is dependent upon sales tax, right? I don't think that's a good structure, because when you have, economic downturns like this, you have a 34% hole in your budget. So I think some rebalancing is needed there, because we are too reliant on sales tax, and unfortunately, we're going to. A lot of municipalities. I think North Charleston, unfortunately, had to lay off about 200 employees. So municipalities and state government are making very tough decisions right now because of that over reliance on sales tax.
And how much tax revenue has District 114 lost in the past 2 years?
That's another great question. I don't have the exact number there. Again, I don't think they break those numbers down specific to districts, but I can certainly get you the numbers for Charleston, Dorchester County, and then maybe a zip code. We can break it out that way.
And how do you define quality of life right now in your district?
Yeah, so quality of life is not sitting in your car for hours on end trying to get to and from work. That is, traffic is beyond flooding and education. Traffic is one of the top issues that I hear from people, and I feel it too. Unfortunately, we'll get stuck. 61 is a major artery of the district, and people are quite frankly, they're tired of losing family time. They're tired of losing family time to be sitting in their car. So we got to take a hard look at that. How do we address that? Do we send the Glenn McConnell to give alternate routes around there? Do we look at things like efficiency, like maybe expand in the future the BRT to run through that route as well, so people have more public transit options? But what I do know is not an experience, and we need folks that are going to fight to alleviate that and make sure that's not impacting our quality of life every day.
And how do you ensure growth with smart growth?
I didn't hear that last part there.
Oh yeah, how do you ensure growth with smart growth?
Yeah, smart growth. So I think a lot of it comes from zoning and design, but more than anything, and I'll borrow this from my background, Air Force pilot for 14 years in counting. And one of the things they teach in military leadership is like start with the goal and work backwards. And we have to look at the low country. What do we want it to look like in 2030? What do we want to look like? What do we want it to look like in 2040, 2050? And then work backwards from there and put the zoning, the building regulations, and all those things in place to get us to that point. And I think, again, unfortunately, just the structure of the way some of our municipalities are kind of jigsawed throughout the community, we have several municipalities rowing in different directions. And 114 is a good example of that. Inside this district, there are 5 different municipalities. You got City of Charleston, City of North Charleston, Summerville, Dorchester County, and Charleston County. And they are, there's a lot of redundance of government there. In South Carolina, we may say we don't like big government. We like a lot of small government. But we need to do some more work on a bigger regional overall view plan of what we want to look like in the low country, because unfortunately these one-off projects or initiatives we're pursuing kind of speak for themselves of how just disjointed things are.
And you talk about obviously infrastructure and public transportation earlier. Let me ask you this about fixing highway infrastructure. How much money would you request from the Department of Transportation to fix the highway infrastructure in 114?
Enough that gets the job done. Some of those budget numbers continue to move every day. So again, going to what I mentioned there is let's see what's as a community, let's prioritize what we want. Whether is it Glenn McConnell extension, is it a mass transit option on 61, and then work backwards from there and say, okay, if this is the initiative that we are going to pursue, how long is it going to take to get done, and then how much money is it going to take, and then it's my job to go fight, not just at the state level, also work with Joe Cunningham at the congressional level to get federal funding. Very few projects, infrastructure projects, happen with just one source of funding. It's usually federal, state, and then local municipality. And that's another thing that's missing, I would say, kind of in 114 is that coordination aspect with different levels of government. And that's why part of the reason I've been running for the seat for over over a year now is to get out and meet as many of those community stakeholders at multiple levels to see what people want and kind of create that crosstalk and make sure that, again, we're trying to get folks rowing in the same direction rather than 5 different directions.
And I might be redundant with this question, but how many stakeholders will you bring to the table to fix the problem of public transportation, that is?
Yeah, so my approach with that is the different levels that I mentioned. I think that we also need to include some nonprofit organizations out there, like Charleston Moves. I love what that organization puts out. They're real big on a concept called Complete Streets, which I support very much as well. And I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of that. That is when we build our roads, we're not just building for cars, we're also building for pedestrian traffic, bicycle traffic, and the potential for mass transit in the future. And that goes a long way. If you give people the option to bicycle somewhere, they'll take it. If you give people the option to walk somewhere, they'll take it. But unfortunately, and again, 61 is the perfect example of this. Those options, quite frankly, just don't exist. So everybody relies on the vehicle, and that leads to big time congestion. And one project in particular, too, that I'm pretty passionate about, and my role as the president of the Reynolds Avenue Area Merchants Association, I'm pursuing this as well. So I kind of joke, I'm pursuing this project on multiple sides of the river, but it's getting pedestrian access across the Cosgrove Bridge. And unfortunately, back in May, we had another gentleman killed on that bridge. Anybody that drives that bridge every day, it's 6 lanes of traffic, and there's no way to walk or bike across there safely, and that's unfortunate. And the last 3 people that have been killed on that bridge have all been people trying to go to work. And if somebody is trying to go to work and provide for their family, I think as elected leaders, we have a duty to provide that safe infrastructure for them to allow that to happen. So we got some work to do, not just on 61, but Cosgrove Bridge. A lot of no shortage of projects here in 114.
And let me ask you this too: what economic and educational opportunities do you hope affordable housing will bring to 114?
Yeah, so I actually had a really good conversation yesterday on Twitter with a gentleman about this, and there's some proposed workforce housing in the Upper Neck area that I'm very much in favor of. And actually, the backdrop of this conversation was regarding food and bev. I think everyone saw the incumbents' comments, very negative comments towards the food and bev industry, and of course, the follow up of that is how I plan to help the food and bev, and one of those is supporting workforce housing, because a lot of folks that work in food and bev, particularly downtown, they don't live downtown. It's the wages are way too low, and they've got to live in other parts of our region. So if we can get workforce housing going that's closer, one, it makes their lives easier, but it also addresses our traffic problem, because you have less people traveling all the way across the region to get to their place of work there. We've also got to look at some of our technical training. Burke High School, for example, has an excellent program there to help people get ready to work in the kitchen, and because we're a food and beverage town. This is a tourism town, but we need to make sure that we're appropriately supporting that program and look at other programs to create a pipeline into that industry. And I'll say the last big thing of how we can support and help food and beverage workers, and not just them, but a state as a whole, is expand Medicaid. The previous governor made a decision not to do that, despite the fact that we're sending our tax dollars up there. We're paying for a program we're not utilizing, but I'm very much in favor of expanding Medicaid. And the day we do that, we will bring 600,000 South Carolinians onto a healthcare plan, which I think is, again, as elected representative, it is a duty to represent the needs of people, and particularly in the backdrop of COVID, especially their health.
And I'm being redundant again because I just heard you say it a little bit. But what is your plan to expand Medicaid?
Yes, that will not be an easy fight. It will absolutely not, and there's no shortage, I'll say, of folks from the upstate that do not want to see that happen. But again, we're already paying for that program. It's almost crazy that we wouldn't, get that service for something that we are paying for. And I'll say we're paying for a double. A lot of those uninsured people because we haven't expanded Medicaid, we're having to pay for put on state programs, right? So I think the easiest way, or the best way, and that's easy is the wrong word, it will not be easy, is to make that a ballot initiative. Oklahoma did that. Oklahoma made Medicaid a ballot initiative, and it passed overwhelmingly. So I think that's something that we should look at doing here in South Carolina, because, I mean, go out there and look at the polling. People want it. This is something that people want. And again, you're taking care of 600,000 South Carolinians, our neighbors, when we expand that program. So let's utilize our tax dollar. We're paying for it. So let's get that service.
And how many people support this in District 114?
I would say well over 70%, probably over 75%. Again, every polling I've seen for Medicaid expansion has been overwhelmingly in favor of.
And how many minority jobs and minority business do you want to bring to 114?
Yes, that's something that is needed. And again, in the social conversation we are having right now, you are seeing a lot of these inequities exposed or kind of laid bare, if you will. And one of the big things is a lack of access to capital to get a business going. I'll tell you another nonprofit I'm a huge favor of is Low Country Local First. We've referred a few of the clients that I work with over there, and they've got a great minority-focused entrepreneur training program that has a lead into some minority option financing programs on the back end of that. So yeah, that's something in 114. We need more minority-owned businesses, and we also need to promote the programs that are out there to allow that to happen, because variety is the spice of life, right? It can't just be everybody that looks like me owning businesses out there. And when we converse and learn from our neighbors, I think we're a richer and more diverse community for that. So supporting minority-owned or programs to support minority-owned businesses is something that I believe strongly in.
And what are the current minority programs in your district?
Quintin, that's a great question. I don't think there's any that are necessarily based here. They're in other regions around here, but of course they have users that I imagine that are living in this district. I'm thinking of one in particular that's on the street that I don't think it's minority owned, but in every story, labor services, they do try to help folks, predominantly minorities, find full-term employment. But yeah, that is something that we're lacking in. There's no question about that.
And everyone's talking obviously about the obviously absentee voting, and now people are saying you need to have a witness there, and some people say you don't, and there's back and forth with that from the state down to the coast. What recommendations do you have to solve this issue?
Follow the lead of the military. I have voted in elections from the Persian Gulf. My vote got counted. Wasn't a problem. We've been doing it since the Civil War. The military has been voting by mail. Of course, you do need security measures in place to make sure it is a safe system. But everything I've seen in South Carolina, the state law enforcement division, all the investigators, we haven't seen. There's a lot of people that want to throw this confusion out there. It's just not reality. We're not seeing mail-in voting fraud here in South Carolina, really as a country as a whole. So that's something that I very much support. I think we made a couple important steps there, but unfortunately a lot of them are temporary. Right now they're for this election only. You can have no fault absentee voting, which is basically vote by mail. I'm a fan of expanding that indefinitely. Let that be our par for the course going forward. And especially in the backdrop of COVID, let's go back to the science. Science tells us that we should not force people to congregate in large masses. This is how the virus spreads. So with that in mind, we should make sure that, we're reducing polling lines as much as possible by giving people the option to either vote early or vote by mail. But beyond just this election, I think we as a state need to look how the military has done it and expand that for the future, because voting is not a privilege. It is a right. It is something that's written in our Constitution. We constantly, have to fight to preserve that right, and we have a duty to make it as easy as possible for every citizen here in our state to cast a ballot, because we are better as a government when more people are involved.
And obviously, you talk about the people and the neighborhoods in the counties in District 114. How long have you been living in District 114?
I've been back here approaching 2 years. I originally moved to district in 2009, being a military guy. I'll say my break was to go overseas in Afghanistan. And so I've been on and off in district here for, I guess, 11 years now, with some breaks for military service.
And how's the kid doing?
He's doing fantastic. So we're crawling now. I haven't told a lot of people that on social media. Thank you. That's like probably my favorite question of the day. He's doing great. I told somebody, I did an interview earlier this week, and I told somebody my only regret so far in life is not becoming a father sooner, because it has been awesome. It has certainly been especially in a tough year with COVID and everything, it has certainly been Amy and I's highlight. And every night, we wrap the night down about 7:00. I do the final bottle, and we have playtime on the mat where we roll around. The dog's involved. He's throwing his blocks, and it's just cool. It's fatherhood has been very memorable, and I enjoy being a dad. It's been a lot of fun.
That's good to hear. And you talked about COVID a second ago. Let me ask you, because obviously broadband access has been an issue with the schools over the past couple of weeks. Should the state make internet a utility?
I think so, yeah. Especially in the rural areas. I mean, this isn't a district, or this isn't an issue that necessarily impacts 114 as much as it does other parts of the state. But we also have to realize that we're all in the same boat. We're all South Carolinians, and if one part of the state is hurting, then we should look at that issue, not just be strictly focused on 3 feet in front of our face. And in a lot of the rural areas of the state, broadband access has been an issue for a very long time. But that issue has exploded in the backdrop of COVID, particularly with virtual learning. A lot of young adults not being able to, have access and having to go to some of these temporary sites on buses, or, if they're lucky enough to, have a Starbucks or, some other kind of food provider with open internet. And I saw a picture the other day. It was 2 young children. They were sitting on the ground outside of a Starbucks on their laptops trying to go to school. And to me, that represents failure. That is a failure that kids have to go on the ground outside and sit at a restaurant to be able to attain education. So that tells me that that's another area that we have to look at and do strong and do better in, because education is a tide that raises all ships. And again, we have a duty to make sure that we're taking care of our young adults, but we're not there yet.
And should fiber lines ever be placed inside rural areas of South Carolina?
I would say yes. I'll be honest. I'm not an expert on the necessarily the technical details of it. But if the ultimate goal, again, going back to the goal, is to make sure that every student has internet access so they can attend virtual school, then let's get there. Whether that's fiber line or some other emerging technology, whether it's some kind of wireless signal. Let's focus on the goal and work towards that point.
Ed Sutton, thank you so much for your time. And again, welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Thanks, Quintin. Good seeing you.
Likewise.